The room smelled like antiseptic and the air was heavy, still. I had just pushed a 7-pound baby into the world, and I was waiting, just waiting, to hear someone say something kind, something real. The doctor was standing at the foot of the bed, holding my son in his gloved hands. His eyes softened as he looked at me and said, "Do you want to hold your son?" Before I could say a word, Caleb stepped forward from the corner of the room. My husband, the man I had loved enough to carry a child with. He didn't reach for our baby. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at me. His voice was flat when he said, "Only if it's mine. Check first." There was a pause, just long enough for my heart to twist in my chest, and then Evelyn spoke, my mother-in-law. She was standing right behind Caleb, arms crossed like she was watching a court verdict instead of the birth of her grandson. "If he's dark-skinned," she said sharply to the nurse, "switch him." That's what she said, in the delivery room, loud enough for the nurse to stiffen, for the doctor to glance up, and for the silence to get sharper than any scalpel in that room. And I said nothing, not because I agreed, not because I didn't feel the sting of every word, but because my body was too tired and my spirit was already bleeding. I stared at Caleb. I looked at Evelyn. I looked at my newborn child, still being cleaned and swaddled like this was just another Tuesday. Then I turned my head to the right, and that's when I saw him. Malik, my son, 9 years old. He was supposed to be in the waiting area, but he had quietly slipped in and stood just beyond the curtain. His tiny hands gripped his iPad, and he was filming. His eyes were wide, unsure, hurt, but steady. "Mom," he said, barely above a whisper, "I think the world should see this." That's when I felt the burn behind my eyes, the lump in my throat, the shame of silence, and the weight of truth. A child had witnessed it all, not just the baby being born, but the ugliness of the people meant to love him. And instead of crying or running away, he chose to document it. He chose to speak. At that moment, something shifted in me, not the kind of shift you recover from overnight, but the kind that leaves a mark so deep it changes your voice forever. This is the story of what happened in that delivery room, of what was said, what was recorded, and what came after. It's the story of betrayal, silence, and a 9-year-old boy who saw too much and was brave enough to speak when no one else did. You need to hear this, because silence isn't peace. And sometimes, the smallest voice in the room is the one that finally tells the truth. Before the delivery room, before the betrayal, before I watched my son film the moment that shattered our family, I believed I had finally found peace. My name is Amara Bennett. I'm a 3rd-grade teacher in Decatur, Georgia. I've always been quiet, the kind of person who carries storms inside but smiles through them anyway. I was 25 when I had Malik. His father was never in the picture, and honestly, that was a blessing. Malik and I built a small life, just the two of us in a rented house filled with bedtime stories, school lunches, and dollar store birthday decorations. He was my reason to keep going on the hard days, and there were a lot of hard days. Then came Caleb. I met him at a school fundraiser. He was there picking up his nephew, and we ended up side by side at the raffle table. He made a joke about how adults only come to school for free cake and gift baskets, and I laughed harder than I expected to. That night, he asked for my number. A month later, we were eating Thai food in my kitchen while Malik quizzed him on superhero trivia. Caleb got every answer right. He was different from anyone I had dated. He was calm, responsible, and soft-spoken. He didn't interrupt. He listened. He never raised his voice. That felt like love to me. It felt safe. We got married 2 years later. It was a small ceremony, just a backyard, string lights, and a few friends. Malik was the ring bearer, grinning with his 2 missing front teeth. Caleb kissed my hand at the altar. He promised he'd never let me feel alone again. When I got pregnant, I was both excited and terrified. It had been 9 years since I'd held a newborn in my arms. My body felt different now, older, tired in new ways. But Malik was thrilled. He would touch my belly every night and whisper secrets to the baby. "You're gonna love Mom," he'd say. "She makes the best pancakes, and I'll show you how to build pillow forts." We found out it was a boy, and I cried in the car on the way home. Not because of the gender, but because I felt like this was my second chance. A real family, a fresh start. But things started changing early in the pregnancy. Caleb became distant. He stopped holding me at night. He missed 2 of my doctor appointments. He blamed work, but I knew it wasn't about work. He was watching me, studying me, like I was someone he didn't fully recognize. Evelyn, his mother, made things worse. She called the baby it instead of him. She made jokes about how dark the baby might be, always with a little laugh that wasn't funny. "I just hope he doesn't look confused about who his daddy is," she'd say, sipping her tea. "Wouldn't want people asking awkward questions in public." The first time she said something like that, I froze. Caleb didn't say anything. He just looked at his phone. I told myself to let it go. Don't start drama. Don't make things worse. But that became a pattern. Evelyn would say something cutting, and Caleb would stay silent. Then she started showing up uninvited. She brought baby clothes, light-colored onesies with Daddy's Little Man written on them in glittery blue letters. One afternoon, I found her folding the laundry I'd left in the dryer. She smiled like it was normal. "I know how tired you must be," she said. "I figured you could use the help." That night, I cried in the bathroom with the door locked. Not because of what she did, but because I felt like I was losing control of my own space, of my own pregnancy. Malik started noticing the tension. He'd sit beside me and ask if everything was okay. He wasn't a loud kid, but he was sharp. He could read the air in a room before anyone said a word. I always told him everything was fine. But even at 9 years old, he knew when I was lying. The night before I went into labor, I remember lying awake, listening to Caleb breathe beside me. I had one hand on my stomach and the other over my heart. I wasn't afraid of birth. I was afraid of what would come after, the looks, the questions, the silence. But I still believed that somehow love would be enough, that once he saw his son, all the doubt would disappear. I was wrong. The morning my water broke, I was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, holding Malik's cereal bowl in one hand and my back with the other. It wasn't dramatic, just a slow, warm trickle and a sudden tightness in my belly. I called Caleb. He didn't answer. I texted, "It's time." 15 minutes later, he pulled into the driveway, quiet as usual. He didn't help me into the car or hold my hand, just tossed my bag in the trunk, adjusted the mirror, and drove. Malik sat in the back seat, his iPad on his lap. He watched me more than his screen. Every bump in the road made me wince. He reached up from behind and placed his hand on my shoulder. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Contractions picked up, and the nurses wheeled me into a room that smelled like disinfectant and winter air. Malik waited in the corner, wrapped in his hoodie, holding his iPad like a shield. He had begged to come. I said no at first, then changed my mind. Something told me I would need him. Evelyn arrived less than 30 minutes after we checked in. I hadn't told her I was in labor. Caleb must have. She walked in like she owned the place, holding a bag of snacks and a clipboard. "I figured someone should keep things organized," she said. The nurse asked who was allowed in the delivery room. I said Caleb and Malik. Evelyn didn't like that. She said she had a right to see her grandson born. Caleb didn't look at me when he told the nurse to let her stay. I was too tired to argue. The epidural numbed my body, but the tension in the room numbed my spirit. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on my breathing. Labor lasted 8 hours. My contractions got closer, stronger. Caleb sat by the window, barely speaking. Evelyn stood near the monitors, commenting on every beep and fluctuation. She asked the nurse if darker babies needed special lights to fix their tone. The nurse gave her a tight smile and walked out. Malik stayed mostly quiet. He filmed short clips of the hospital room, the monitors, the hallway, like he was documenting something important. I noticed he kept turning the camera toward people's faces when they talked. I didn't know then that he had already started recording everything. When the doctor came in and said I was ready to push, the room shifted. The lights got brighter. People moved faster. I gripped the bed rails and thought of Malik when he was born, his tiny hands, his eyes that looked only at me. After 30 minutes, the doctor lifted my son into the air, a perfect, screaming, beautiful baby boy, the room filled with the sound of new life. I looked at Caleb, waiting to see joy in his face, but there was nothing, just the same blank stare he'd been wearing for months. The doctor turned toward us and asked, "Do you want to hold your son?" That should have been the moment. the one you remember for the rest of your life. But instead of reaching out, Caleb stayed seated and said, "Only if it's mine. Check first." The room went quiet. Even the baby's cries seemed to pause. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then Evelyn stepped forward and spoke to the nurse without looking at me. "If he's dark-skinned, switch him," she said, flat and certain, like she was asking for a cup of coffee. I couldn't breathe. The air around me disappeared. I looked at Caleb, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to defend our child. He said nothing. And I said nothing. Not because I didn't want to, but because my throat locked up and my heart collapsed in on itself. My baby was still in the doctor's hands, crying, needing me, and I couldn't move. Then I heard a small voice from the right side of the room. "Mom?" I turned my head. Malik was standing just past the curtain, his iPad pressed to his chest. His face was pale, his lips tight. He had heard everything. He had recorded everything. His voice shook, but he said the words clearly. "I think the world should see this." Malik's voice broke through the silence like glass cracking under pressure. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. His small frame stood in the doorway, shoulders tense, gripping his iPad with both hands. His eyes were wide and wet, not from tears, but from something worse, disappointment. At 9 years old, he had heard more than any child ever should. He had recorded it, and now he was standing there, asking if it should be shared. I think the world should see this. My mind raced. I was holding Elijah now, still wrapped in hospital blankets, warm against my chest. His tiny body rose and fell with each breath. He was beautiful. A full head of curly hair, round cheeks, and skin that mirrored his father's. There was no question. He was Caleb's child, but none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was what had just happened in front of my son. Evelyn shifted in place, her arms crossed, her mouth pulled into a line, her tone immediately defensive. "He shouldn't be in here. That's not appropriate. You should tell him to delete that." Caleb stood too, but he didn't look at me or Malik. He looked at the floor and said nothing. I looked at my son. His chest was rising fast, like he was trying not to cry. He didn't understand all the layers of what he had witnessed, but he understood enough. He understood disrespect. He understood the difference between love and cruelty. And in that moment, he was braver than anyone else in the room. "Malik," I said softly, "you recorded all of it?" He nodded. "I didn't mean to. I was just filming the room. But then Grandma said that stuff. And Dad, too. I didn't want to forget. I wanted to show you later." I took a breath. Not a shallow one, but a full, steady inhale. My body was sore, exhausted, but my mind was finally waking up. "You did the right thing," I said. Evelyn snapped. "Excuse me, that's what you're telling him? He invaded our privacy. He's a child, not a journalist." Caleb finally spoke. "Amara, maybe we should just delete it and move on. It was a tense moment. People say things." I looked at him for a long time. I searched his face for any hint of remorse, any sign that he understood the weight of what had happened. But all I saw was discomfort. He wasn't sorry for what he said. He was just embarrassed it had been captured. "This wasn't just a tense moment," I said. "This was your son being born. And you asked for proof before you'd touch him. Your mother told a nurse to switch him based on his skin color. That's not heat of the moment. That's who you are." I looked back at Malik. "Let me see the video." He walked toward me, slow and careful, and handed me the iPad. I played it back. The video was shaky but clear. The audio picked up every word. Caleb's doubt, Evelyn's cruelty, my silence. "I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner," I said, tears starting to sting behind my eyes. I was scared. I didn't want to believe this was real. But you, Malik, you saw it, and you didn't look away. He stood beside the bed and leaned his head against my shoulder. I wrapped my arm around him as best I could with the baby in the other. His breath slowed. He needed to feel safe, and I needed to make sure he never doubted that he had the right to speak the truth. "I don't want people to think our family is bad," he whispered. "This isn't about shame," I said. "This is about making sure no one else thinks it's okay to treat someone like this. You told the truth, and that's powerful. That's brave. The nurse returned to check vitals. She glanced at Caleb and Evelyn, then gently asked if I wanted the room cleared. I nodded. I think it's time they left. Caleb hesitated but didn't argue. Evelyn opened her mouth, then closed it again. She turned and walked out, heels clicking against the floor. I watched them go, and for the first time since arriving at the hospital, I felt something close to calm. My son had protected me. Not with anger or noise, but with truth. That was the moment everything changed. The day after Elijah was born, the hospital room was quiet. Malik sat near the window drawing on his iPad, his headphones on. He had barely spoken since Caleb and Evelyn left. I held Elijah to my chest and watched him sleep. His face was calm. He had no idea what he'd been born into, no idea of the words spoken about him before he'd taken his first breath. My phone buzzed. Caleb had texted, "We need to talk. Please don't make this public." There was no apology, no explanation, just fear of exposure. I stared at the message until the screen went black. Later that afternoon, Malik pulled his headphones down and walked over to the bed. "Are we going to tell people?" he asked. His voice was small but serious. This wasn't curiosity. It was responsibility. He had carried the weight of what he saw, and now he needed to know what would come of it. "I don't know yet," I said. "Why do you think we should?" He looked down at his iPad. "Because people shouldn't be treated like that. Not you, not Elijah, not anyone. What if other moms feel the same but are too scared to say it?" I reached for his hand. "Are you scared?" "A little, but I still think it matters." That night, while Elijah slept and Malik drew quietly at the little hospital table, I uploaded the video. I didn't post it on social media, not at first. I sent it anonymously to a parenting forum where I used to read birth stories. I titled it, "What My 9-Year-Old Filmed During My Delivery." In the post, I didn't name names. I didn't add dramatic language. I told the truth exactly as it happened. I said my husband questioned our son's paternity before holding him. I said my mother-in-law suggested the nurse switch him based on his skin color. I said my son captured it all. I went to sleep with my phone under my pillow, unsure what I would wake up to. By morning, the post had over 10,000 comments. By noon, screenshots were trending across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. People were angry, heartbroken, and fired up. Mothers shared their own stories of racism in delivery rooms. Nurses commented about what they'd witnessed and been forced to ignore. Activists reposted the clip, calling for hospitals to implement new anti-bias protocols. News outlets reached out. Parenting blogs and advocacy groups asked to publish the video. I declined interviews. I wasn't ready for cameras or microphones. But the story kept spreading. It was out there, and it was being heard. Then Caleb called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Amara, I didn't mean it like that. You're twisting it." I was stressed. "This isn't fair." Fair. That word stuck in my throat. He thought fairness was about image, about saving face, not about the child he doubted, not about the woman he humiliated, not about the boy who captured the truth. Later that evening, Evelyn sent an email. She didn't deny anything. She said I had misinterpreted her words, that I was creating drama to make her look like a villain. She ended it with a line that read, "You'll regret turning your family into a spectacle." I closed the email and deleted it. Malik sat on the bed beside me. "Did they say sorry?" "No," I said. "They didn't." He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Are they coming back?" "Not if I can help it." Malik didn't say anything after that. He just leaned his head on my shoulder like he used to when he was little and tired from the day. In the days that followed, I filed for separation. I asked the hospital to restrict Evelyn from visiting. I blocked both their numbers. I stopped being afraid of what people might think, because I wasn't ashamed. Not of myself, not of Malik, and certainly not of Elijah. I was proud. The world had seen what happened, but more importantly, Malik had seen himself stand up for what was right. That mattered more than anything. I didn't know what life would look like next, but I knew who I would be walking it with. My sons. Both of them. Born into truth, not secrets. Raised with courage, not silence. 2 weeks after I brought Elijah home, Malik taped a sign to the fridge. It read, "Our house is for truth. No lies, no hate." He wrote it in red marker and drew a little heart next to it. That sign stayed up. No one questioned it, Not even me. The house was quieter, with Caleb gone. No half-hearted apologies, no silence that felt like judgment, just the sounds of Malik humming while he colored, Elijah's soft breathing, and the occasional lullaby playing from my phone in the middle of the night. It wasn't the life I had pictured. It was better. I filed for a protective order against Evelyn. The hospital supported my request and documented the incident. I learned later that the nurse who heard her speak out reported it to her supervisor. A formal complaint was submitted. That gave me some peace. Not revenge, just accountability. Malik asked questions every day, not in an overwhelming way, but in the thoughtful, careful way he always had. Why would Grandma say something like that? Do you think people will be mad at me for sharing it? Are there other moms this happened to? I answered him honestly, because some people believe terrible things and don't even try to stop. If they're mad, they're not the people we need to protect. Yes, too many. He nodded each time and carried those truths like a boy twice his age, but I made sure he also carried joy. We baked cookies. We watched animated movies while Elijah napped on my chest. He made a lullaby playlist for his baby brother titled Elijah's Chill Mix. It was full of songs with soft drums and warm voices. He said the baby should grow up hearing peace. I started writing again. I posted more birth stories, sharing my experience, using my real name this time. The response was overwhelming. Other mothers came forward. Some messaged me privately, afraid to comment publicly. Some were nurses, doulas, or midwives. They had seen women silenced, insulted, ignored. One woman, a nurse from Denver, wrote, "Your son is the kind of man the world needs. Thank you for raising him that way." I didn't respond right away. I just stared at that sentence for a while. It wasn't praise. It was a reminder. Malik hadn't just witnessed the worst moment of my life. He had saved me from it. His voice called me back when mine was lost. He taught me that silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just a pause that gives cruelty room to grow. One morning, a small package arrived at our door. It was from an organization that advocates for maternal health equity. Inside was a thank you card and a note saying they had shared our story with their team, and it had inspired a new training video on racial bias in hospital settings. I read the letter out loud to Malik. He sat at the kitchen table, legs swinging from the chair. "Do you think that means the baby will be safer when he grows up?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "because you made sure people listened." He smiled, leaned over, and gently touched Elijah's tiny fingers. Elijah started cooing more. His little fists curled around Malik's thumbs like they already knew each other. Sometimes I would catch Malik talking to him like a tiny man, telling him jokes, reading him facts about planets, or making promises. "I won't let anyone talk bad about you," he said one night while I stood in the doorway and watched. "If they do, I'll film them again." I didn't cry. I let the warmth spread through my chest, steady and strong. This wasn't just about a video anymore. It was about legacy. It was about who we were going to be from here forward. I wasn't the same woman I was in that delivery room. That version of me stayed behind, buried under years of swallowing words. I left her there. I brought my sons home and decided they would never inherit my silence. People always talk about what mothers teach their sons, but sometimes it's the sons who teach the mother how to fight, and I will never stop fighting for them. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of something you've experienced or witnessed, don't let it stop here. Like this video, share it. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you've been through. Tell me what you've seen. Because silence protects the wrong people, and stories like this one deserve to be heard. Subscribe to the channel if you believe in truth, in courage, in the power of speaking up, even when your voice shakes, especially then. And to every mother, father, daughter, son, or soul out there who's ever been silenced, this space is for you. You're not alone. We see you, we hear you, and we're not staying quiet anymore.